speaker is Martin Borrett. Martin is the director of the IBM Institute of Advanced Security in Europe. He leads IBM's security blueprint work and is co-author of two books, Introducing the IBM Security Framework and IBM Security Blueprint to Realize Business-Driven Security. He is chairman of the European IBM Security User Group. And last but not least, Martin has a passion for sailing and as representing Great Britain. He's also a keen tennis player. So, please.
It's an absolute pleasure for me to be here with you this afternoon in Tel Aviv and talk to you about a subject that's very close to my heart. But before I really get started, let me just share a very short story with you. I'm also a big fan of castles, as well as my sailing and tennis. I love castles. And I suspect several of you in the audience will recognize this particular castle. It is, of course, the Scarlet Castle in the town of Simone on the southern shores of Lake Garda in northern Italy. And it was built in 1151 by a wealthy landowner and his family. And at the time, it was absolutely state-of-the-art, the very latest in castle technology. It has very, very thick stone walls, over a meter thick in places. These very, very grand square turrets that you can see and ornaments. It stands on a small island, just remote from the mainland, joined by a drawbridge and a portcullis. It has all the features that they could build at the time. And it stood undefeated for 100 years, till 1251 in the 13th century, when something disruptive happened. Gunpowder came along. Gunpowder came into Europe, and with it came the cannon, and this particular castle was overturned. It was ransacked through the use of cannon. No? I can come closer. I can stand here. Can you hear me at the back? Are you awake? It is after lunch. I'll stand still. I'll stand still. I've been told now. I'm actually a bit of a hand waver. I like to go and gesture at the castle. So, what seemed at the time as a really great idea to build these very robust square turrets was actually the undoing of the castle. They were the perfect target for the cannonballs. And for those of you with very good eyesight, you'll see that the render has been restored here on this castle. And after that time, castle design changed. It moved on, it evolved. People built castles with round turrets that you might recognize, and other rounded ramparts and defenses to protect against things like cannonballs. And the point of that short story is that we're never done with security. There are always new challenges around the corner, new threats, new things that we have to deal with. And therefore, we have to think a lot about our approach to that. We need to think about flexibility in our approach. We have to recognize that there are those new challenges. So think about flexibility, think about agility. How are we going to cope with those new demands? We need to look at our architectures and we need to question, are they modular enough? Are they standards-based? Are they adaptable? Can organizations adjust to meet the challenges of tomorrow? I don't have a crystal ball, despite what some people believe. I don't know what threats are just around the corner. And so the approach that you take is so critical. And it is important. I'm probably going to echo several things that the previous speaker said. That there's no silver bullet here. It is so important to look at a combination of people, process and technology when we address cybersecurity. So with that said, I think a good place to start is with a definition. So there's been a lot of talk this morning about just what is cybersecurity. And I suspect if I asked you all in this room, I'd get many different answers. So for us in IBM, it's really about this simple definition. It really is about protecting organizations and their assets from attack in order to minimize the risk of business disruption. That's what it's about at the end of the day. And you may be sitting there thinking, well, that sounds just like classic information security. Where's the cyber in this definition? And the piece that I want to share with you to help set the context is to talk about something that IBM calls Smarter Planet. So IBM's been spending a lot of time talking to clients about this topic, and I want to try and bring it to life for you this afternoon. Smarter Planet is all about the way the world is changing, the fabric of the infrastructure that we rely on every day of our lives, day to day. And I see it a lot here in Israel and in Tel Aviv as I flew in last night and I looked at the city and how it changed over the last few years since I've been here. I can see the way that technology has crept into the fabric of your lives. And what I mean by that is the way in which devices are instrumented, increasingly instrumented. And I don't just mean computers, laptops, smartphones, but all sorts of devices, some of which you might not even recognize as computers. For example, last year I was at a conference with a doctor and we were chatting over dinner, and he was talking to me about the very latest generation of heart pacemaker. These latest pacemakers are fully instrumented. They monitor the performance of the heart, how it's beating, and they monitor the performance of the pacemaker itself. And you can download that information, that audit, that log information, onto a computer like this and email it to your doctor. The doctor can review that information. They can check how the heart is performing, how the pacemaker is performing as an electronic device. And guess what? If you need to make a reconfiguration, they can do that too, wirelessly reconfigure the pacemaker. So at one level, that is fantastic progress. No need to go into hospital, have invasive surgery, which always carries some level of risk. We can do it all wirelessly. But if I put on my security hat, that raises key concerns about the security of that protocol, how is it being authenticated, all sorts of questions. And it's not just pacemakers, insulin pumps, cars, fridges, and if you look at this chart, all sorts of pieces of critical national infrastructure that you rely on day to day in your lives to distribute power or water, whatever it might be, they are instrumented and interconnected in this sort of way. And that's really, I think, the context for cybersecurity. Let me just take a moment to talk a little bit about the threats. There's been a lot of discussion again about this during the course of the day. I think what we would all recognize is there is an increasing sophistication about them. We've moved beyond the days of just people exploiting zero-day attacks, looking for vulnerabilities and exploiting them before someone discovers them. We really are into a much more sophisticated, planned and premeditated phase where individuals and groups of individuals carefully research their targets using information often gathered from the public domain, often these days gathered from social media sources, but also from phishing attacks and other intelligence gathering, and carefully plan and do their homework. They do their reconnaissance. They find the weak points in organizations and make an initial infection from where they expand out and then ultimately go after their target. One of the things about this style of attack is it's typically very long running. These people take their time. They're not in a hurry. Okay? They take their time, they see if they're discovered, they go a bit further, they see if they're discovered, and they take their time. So already today, I think as a group here, we know an awful lot about the nature of these different attacks. Certainly, plenty has been discussed today about different approaches and ways to tackle that. And I think that's important to recognize. We know a lot. There's already today a lot we can do to address this type of threat based on what we know. But again, there's no one silver bullet here. There's no one IPS or firewall or technical control that can solve this. It really does come down to taking a holistic approach and looking at people, process, and technology. Expertise is very important. This is one of my favorite IBM charts that I like to show every time I present, because this is one of the areas that IBM really does excel as a global organization. We do have that expertise. We do have that insight. And I like to share this because it's often not very visible. People think about IBM for mainframes. They might think about IBM for software, perhaps some services, but they don't often think about the security expertise that we have. What this chart shows in blue are 133 countries around the world where we manage security for some 4,000 clients, generating 13 billion events every day. It's 150,000 every second. That's managed by 9 security operations centers around the world, working together as a virtual SOC, looking at those operations, 7 by 24, every minute of the day. Right now, that's going through Brussels here in Europe. That's important because that gives us tremendous insight into what's going on right now in a very real way. What's affecting our clients? What are the issues? What are the current threats and trends? What are the new threats? And we can track that around the globe. We also invest a huge amount into security research. IBM overall invests billions of dollars into research, and security is an important area. Every one of these research labs in green is researching security. Here in Israel, Haifa, do a huge amount of security research work, leading-edge security research work. And in a moment, I'll talk about one particular team that's in Atlanta, the XForce. We also have the Institutes for Advanced Security. I run the one here in Europe, trying to take advantage of all that expertise and insight and knowledge and bring it to bear in different forums, both directly with clients, but also events like this, working with NATO, working with the European Commission, the European Organization for Security, and other organizations to really collaborate. Because I think it's only really when we work together that we're going to solve some of these issues. So I mentioned just then briefly the XForce. This is one of our leading security teams, several hundred people, largely based in Atlanta. We acquired this team in 2007 when we acquired Internet Security Systems into IBM. And they do a huge amount of work looking at the overall threat and vulnerability landscape. They publish a report every 6 months. So there's a mid-year report and a full-year report. And what you can see here is some snippets from that full-year report, looking at the overall landscape from a factual and research-based effort. So this is a way to try and quantify the threats that we all face and try and understand them. And this team has been doing that for over 10 years, so they have one of the largest vulnerability databases in the world. So we can compare and contrast what's been happening year after year. Just a couple of highlights from the full year 2011 report. So we did see some progress. We saw progress around web application vulnerabilities. They actually declined. We saw the number of systems that were patched increasing. These are systems for which patches are available. That was increasing. But at the same time, as we tightened the loop in one area, people found new and more sophisticated vulnerabilities to go after. So as you close the door on the low-hanging fruit, people go after more sophisticated techniques. And at the same time, of course, the technology landscape itself doesn't stand still. We have new technology platforms. We have the emergence of cloud, people bringing their own devices to work, the increasing use of mobile in that context, and social networking and so on. So it's never standing still. This report is freely available to you all. You can just download it from the internet. There's no charge. You can download it and read it to your heart's content. Just like to take a minute or two and talk about a piece of work I did at the beginning of last year with a couple of colleagues globally, really looking at this cybersecurity challenge. And what we felt was needed was a way to really try and operationalize the approach. You know, technology is one thing, and you need good technology at an affordable price point, as per the previous gentleman. But you also need to look at that people and process aspect and how you actually operationalize it. This life cycle, which is very simple, 5 key phases, has been highly effective with a number of clients around Europe as we've worked with them on this. And really what it's about is learning, understanding where you are, how prepared are you, how well educated are your people, what's the security culture in your organization, what is your security architecture, what are your assets, everything to do with understanding and learning where you are today. Then it's about monitoring, understanding what's going on in your organization at a number of different levels. and then analysing that information. And I think this is an important area for us to focus on. Analytics, advanced security analytics, ways in which we can get deeper insight in real time, in the context of your business, of your organisation, into what's actually going on amidst what is increasingly becoming a big data problem. Several people this morning have spoken about big data and the volume of information that organisations are grappling with as they try and understand the security threats. So I think analytics is going to become very, very important moving forward. And that's certainly an area that we're investing a huge amount of research effort into. With better analytics, you can make better decisions, I would assert. And then you can respond, and then you can learn from that, and you can go round. And one of the key things is the ability to navigate around this life cycle rapidly. And that involves having good processes, having good communication, and of course having good technology. I'll just quickly share some success that we've been having with clients using these advanced analytic techniques. It's relatively easy for me to share these three stories with NATO, the US Air Force, and the Federal Aviation Administration because they're official IBM press releases for them, and the client said it's fine to talk about this in public. Clearly, organisations are very sensitive about talking about what they do in the security space because, of course, that itself exposes them to risk and vulnerability. But for these three clients, we've been doing some leading-edge work, really applying this advanced security analytics in different contexts. The final thing I wanted to say, really in closing, and just bringing together a few of the things I've said in the few brief minutes that I've had with you this afternoon, is that we are trying to take a holistic approach to security. We're not trying to look at any one dimension. We are trying to look across people, process, and technology. We've developed this IBM security framework. That's how we're going to market around security. So we have solutions focused on people, on data, on applications, on infrastructure. We look at governance, risk, and compliance. We fuel those solutions with the research that we do. We recognize that security analytics and intelligence is going to become increasingly important to glue that together to get the deeper insights into what's going on in real time. And we're lucky as an organization in that we can offer solutions to clients in several different forms. Software and technology and appliances that you can buy and deploy and use yourself. We have services to help with designing systems, architecture, assessing where you are, looking at governance, risk policy, all sorts of consultancy. And we have managed security services, those SOCs I spoke about, where we manage security for thousands of clients who trust us to do that on their behalf because we have invested in the expertise. We do have a critical mass of deep expertise together that we nurture, we provide a career for, we train, all those things you need to do to retain that critical skill. So with that said, I'd like to stop. I think I'm out of time. And thank you for the opportunity to talk to you this afternoon. Thank you.